I always thought the day my son stopped believing in me would be the hardest day of my life. But I was wrong. The hardest day was the day I stood in the middle of his living room, holding my small travel bag in my hand, listening to my daughter-in-law quietly say, "I think it's time for you to go." And the painful part wasn't her words. It was the way my son lowered his eyes and said nothing. I did not argue. I did not cry. I only smiled, because my heart was too tired to break again. As I stepped out of their home, I remember hearing the soft click of the door closing behind me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was quiet, almost polite. But somehow, that soft sound felt like the end of something I had spent my whole life building. The street was calm that evening. A light wind brushed against my face, and for a moment, I let myself stand there, wondering how everything had changed so quickly. I had come into that home with hope. Hope that I could spend time with my son. Hope that I could help them with their new baby. Hope that my presence would bring warmth. But instead I became unwanted. And the strange thing is, I kept asking myself one question. How did I become a burden to the people I love the most? As I walked away, I wasn't angry. My heart felt quiet, soft, like a piece of paper that had been folded too many times. I tried to tell myself that maybe they needed space, that maybe I had misunderstood something. A mother can lie to herself like that, but only for a short while. Because deep down I knew the truth. I knew what she had done. I knew what she had told him. I knew what she wanted from the very beginning. But what hurt the most was not her actions. It was that my own son, my only child, believed her instead of me. If you ask me today how that happened, I can tell you. I can tell you everything. How small misunderstandings grew into silence. How kindness was twisted into accusations. How a gentle home changed into a place I no longer recognized. This is my story. And I am telling it not because I want pity, but because I want peace. I was not always this quiet, gentle woman who walks slowly and speaks softly. There was a time in my life when I was full of energy, full of plans, full of dreams. Most of those dreams were not for myself, but for my son. His name is Ayan. Even saying his name now brings a soft warmth to my chest. Ayan was a miracle for me. I had him after years of praying, years of waiting, and years of enduring the pain of not knowing if motherhood would ever be written for me. When he finally arrived, I held him in the hospital bed and whispered, "You are my whole life now." And I meant it. Every word. My husband and I were never rich, but we always tried to make sure Ayan had what he needed. My husband worked long shifts, and I used to stitch clothes from home to add a little extra income. Many nights I stayed awake past midnight, my fingers hurting from the needle, just so Ayan could have a better school uniform or a special snack for lunch the next day. I never complained. Love makes hard work feel lighter. From the time he was little, Ayan was gentle. A quiet child with bright eyes and a calm heart. He never made trouble, never fought with anyone. He would sit beside me while I stitched and say, "Amy, one day I will make everything easy for you." And I would smile and gently tap his cheek. "You already do." When he grew older, our bond only deepened. He was the kind of son who would bring me small gifts. A flower from the roadside, a sweet he saved from his lunchbox, a drawing he made in school. I kept every drawing in a small folder. And sometimes even now, when I feel lonely, I look at them. Life was not perfect, but it was peaceful. Then, when Ayan turned 25, everything began to change, slowly, quietly, like a soft wind that you don't notice at first. That was the year he told me he had met someone. Her name was Rida. I still remember the first time I saw her. She came to our house with a polite smile, holding a small box of sweets. She looked confident, well-spoken, and sure of herself. Almost too sure, I would say now. But that day, I welcomed her warmly. Why wouldn't I? A mother's biggest hope is that her child finds someone who will love him as much as she does. I tried to make her feel comfortable. I offered tea, biscuits, and even made her favorite dish the next time she visited. Chicken karahi with soft warm naan. She thanked me, but her eyes did not show much warmth. I told myself not to think too much about it. Maybe she was shy. Maybe she was reserved. People show affection in different ways. When they got engaged, I prayed for their happiness every night. I wanted their marriage to be strong, filled with love and understanding. I told Ayan, marriage is not only about two people. It is about patience, listening, and caring. He smiled and said, Emmy, I learned all that from you. His words felt like a gentle hug. The wedding was simple but beautiful. I wore a soft green dress that Ayan chose for me. He said the color matched my calm nature. Rida looked stunning in her bridal outfit, and for a moment during the event, when she took my hand, I truly believed we could become a family, not just in name, but in heart. But life has a way of revealing true colors slowly. After the wedding, Ayan and Rida moved into a rented apartment not too far from my home. He visited me every week, sometimes twice, bringing groceries or just sitting with me during tea time. But over time, these visits became less frequent. First once a week, then once every 2 weeks, then sometimes a whole month would go by. Work is busy, Amy, he would say. And I believed him. Work does get busy. But there was something else too, a slight change in his tone, a small hesitation in his voice, like someone had whispered something into his ears. Still, I didn't question him. A mother's heart always finds excuses to protect her child. 2 years passed this way. Rida and I were polite with each other, but never close. She kept a distance, a kind of invisible wall I could feel even when she smiled. Whenever I visited their home, she would look uneasy, as if she was waiting for me to leave. I tried to shorten my visits, because I didn't want to cause discomfort. My presence should have felt like warmth, not a burden. Then last winter I fell ill. A simple cold turned into a chest infection. The doctor advised me to rest and avoid stress. Ayan came to check on me twice, bringing medicine and soup. He stayed for a short while, then hurried back home. I didn't blame him. He had responsibilities. But I did feel a quiet emptiness in the house after he left. When I recovered, he called and said something that surprised me. Amy, why don't you come stay with us for a few weeks? You should be around family. I felt a light bloom in my heart. It had been so long since I had been invited like that. I packed a small bag, brought my warm shawl, and prepared myself for days of companionship and family warmth. If only I knew what was waiting for me inside that house. If only I knew what she would whisper behind closed doors. If only I knew how quickly love could turn into doubt. But that part of the story comes later. For now, I can only tell you this. I walked into their home with love in my heart, and I walked out with the silence I still carry. When I arrived at their home with my small travel bag, I felt hopeful in a quiet way. The winter air was cool, and the hallway smelled faintly of cinnamon from a candle Rida often kept on the shelf. Ayan opened the door and smiled warmly. Ammi, kumain. You must be tired. He took my bag from my hand, and for a moment, I felt like I had stepped back in time. Back to the days when he would rush to open the door for me after school, excited to show me his drawings. But those memories faded quickly when I noticed Rida standing behind him. Her smile was polite. Her posture straight. Her eyes calm but not warm. Assalamu alaikum, Ammi, she said gently. Welcome. I returned the greeting with genuine affection. I truly wanted peace. I wanted to believe that things would finally feel like family. I wanted these weeks to strengthen the bond between us, not break it. But the first sign appeared the very next morning. I woke up early as I always do. My body is used to early mornings, to warming the house, making breakfast, starting the day with quiet purpose. Out of habit, I went to the kitchen and began preparing tea and eggs. It did not take long for me to feel her presence behind me. Rida stood at the doorway, arms folded lightly, her brows slightly raised. Not angry, just surprised. Or perhaps bothered. Oh, you're cooking? She said softly. I smiled. Yes, Beta. I thought I would make breakfast for us. She walked in slowly, her steps careful, like she was entering a space that had been altered without permission. You don't need to do that, Ammi, she said. I usually handle breakfast. It's easier. Her words were not harsh. But the tone, that subtle reserved edge, told me I had made a mistake. I am sorry, I replied quickly. I didn't mean to interfere. No, she said softly. It's okay. I just have my own system. Everything is organized a certain way. She began moving utensils, adjusting containers, shifting small items on the counter as if putting the kitchen back into its correct shape. I stepped aside. Suddenly, I felt like a guest, not a mother. Their son, little Michael, was only 9 months old. A beautiful child with large brown eyes and a soft laugh that melted my heart instantly. When I held him, I felt a piece of myself return, the part that had been lonely for a long time. But even this small joy seemed to disturb something inside Rita. Every time I picked him up, she appeared. Quietly, quickly, as if drawn by something invisible. Careful, Amy. He just ate. Amy, he needs to nap now. Amy, please support his back properly. I knew she loved her child. That is natural. But it felt less like care, and more like surveillance. One afternoon, while I gently rocked Michael to sleep, humming a lullaby from my childhood, Rita entered the room and said, "I will put him down. You can rest." Her voice was firm, the kind that does not allow discussion. I handed Michael over, but something in my heart tightened. I began to notice a pattern. Whenever I grew close to the baby, she stepped in. Whenever he smiled at me, she looked uneasy. Whenever he reached his tiny hand toward me, she became tense. But again, I stayed quiet. A mother-in-law must be careful not to overstep. I reminded myself of this countless times. After a few days, I began to notice the soft murmurs behind their bedroom door. Late at night, early in the morning, sometimes even during the afternoon. Their voices were low, but the rhythm was unmistakable, whispers shaped by tension. One night as I passed by, I heard Rita say, "You don't understand, Ayan, she treats me like I'm not capable." I stopped breathing for a moment. Ayan replied quietly, "Rita, she's just trying to help." Then came Rita's reply, a whisper sharp enough to cut. "Helping is one thing. Taking over is another." Taking over? For making tea? For holding the baby? For folding a blanket that had been left out? The words stung, but I walked away. It was not my place to listen. Still, the echo remained inside me. Ayan, who once shared everything with me, seemed distant. Not cold, not rude, just uneasy, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Sometimes he would sit with me during tea, but his eyes would drift. His fingers would tap lightly on the table. When I asked if work was stressing him, he only nodded and changed the subject. One evening, I reached out and gently touched his hand. "Beta, is everything okay?" He hesitated. A long pause. Then a small, practiced smile. "Yes, Amy. Everything is fine." But mothers know. We always know. The warmth in his smile was thinner. The comfort in his tone was weaker. The closeness between us was fading. Quietly, slowly, like a candle burning out without wind. One afternoon I sat on the sofa, mending a small rip in one of Michael's shirts. Rita entered the room and froze for a moment. "Oh, you stitched it?" she asked, her voice polite but strained. "Yes, Beta," I said gently. "It was torn. I thought I could fix it." She pressed her lips together just slightly. A tiny gesture, but loud enough for a mother to understand. "I was going to fix it later," she said quietly. "I had planned it." I lowered my gaze. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take your work." She didn't reply. She only collected the folded laundry and walked away. I sat there for several minutes, feeling my heartbeat slow, and then sink. Why did everything I do feel like a step into the wrong direction? Why did every kindness feel like an intrusion? But I didn't complain. I kept telling myself, she is young. She is adjusting. Give her time. What I didn't know then was that time was not the issue. Her heart was. One evening after dinner, I offered to wash the dishes. Ayan insisted I rest, but I gently refused. "I enjoy doing small chores," I said. "They keep my hands busy." Rita was drying the baby's bottle while I washed a few plates. The room was quiet, except for the sound of running water. Then suddenly she spoke. "Amy, next time, can you tell me before using the nonstick pan?" I turned to her, confused. "Oh, of course. Did I do something wrong?" "It's just, I have a system," she replied. "I like keeping certain pans for certain foods." I nodded. "I understand. I will be more careful." But her expression didn't soften. "It's okay," she said. But her tone carried something else, something unspoken, something sharp. The rest of the night, she barely spoke to me. And when Ayan returned from putting the baby to sleep, he sensed the tension. He asked her softly, "Everything okay?" And she only gave a small shrug, the kind of shrug that creates more questions than answers. I saw Ayan look at me, then look at her, and I watched confusion cloud his face. This was the beginning of doubt, the beginning of cracks. 3 days later, Rida and Ayan left for some errands, leaving me home with the baby. Michael began crying loudly after they left, and I paced the living room with him, humming, soothing, trying to calm him. After nearly an hour, he finally fell asleep in my arms. When they returned, I gently laid him in his crib. Rida walked into the room, glanced at the baby, and then looked at me with a strange expression. "You picked him up again?" she asked quietly. "He was crying a lot," I said softly. I didn't want him to stay upset. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something like suspicion. "Oh," she said simply. "Okay." I thought the conversation ended there. But that night, behind their bedroom door, I heard something that made my heart sink. "She doesn't listen," Rida whispered. "I tell her not to pick him up so much, but she keeps doing it. It's confusing for him." My chest tightened. Ayan replied hesitantly, "Maybe she didn't hear you." "I told her," Rida insisted. "More than once. But she never told me. Not even once." And yet, her version would soon become the only version he believed. Over the next few days, Ayan became quieter around me. Not rude, never disrespectful, just distant. When I spoke, he sometimes gave half answers. When I shared small stories from my day, he nodded without really listening. Once, when Rida stepped out of the room, I touched his arm gently. "Beta, did I do something wrong?" He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. "No, Amy, it's nothing." But the hesitation told me everything. Doubt had entered his heart. And doubt is the slow poison that kills trust. It happened on a cold evening. I was in the kitchen making tea. Rida walked in and said in a low voice, "Please don't move the spice jars. I keep them in a specific order." I smiled gently. I did not move anything. She looked surprised. I saw the chili jar shifted to the right. "I only opened the cupboard to take tea," I said softly. She paused, then said nothing. Later that night, I overheard her telling Ayan, "She keeps touching my things," even after I asked her not to. I stood in the hallway, my heart slowly folding into itself. Why was everything I did, even things I never did, turned into mistakes? And why? Why was my son starting to believe them? The cracks in our family were no longer invisible. They were spreading, one whisper at a time, one misunderstanding at a time, one quiet accusation at a time. But the real breaking point, the moment everything shattered, was still waiting ahead. And when it came so gently, so quietly, that even my own heart didn't realize it was breaking until it was already broken. The real turning point did not arrive with shouting or slamming doors. It came in silence, a soft, gentle silence that carried the weight of something irreversible. Looking back, I realized that the saddest moments in life rarely make noise. They arrive like a quiet knock, a small whisper, a simple sentence spoken without thought. For me, that sentence came one morning. I woke early as usual. The house was still, peaceful. The kind of soft calm you feel just before dawn begins to warm the walls. I decided to make parathas for breakfast. I had not cooked much during my stay, trying to respect Rida's space, but that morning, my heart wanted to do something loving, something motherly. As I rolled out the dough gently, the kitchen door opened. Ayan walked in first, his hair messy from sleep. Behind him came Rida, already dressed, her expression unreadable. "Ahan, Amy woke early," Ayan said with a smile. "She's making breakfast." But Rida didn't smile. She looked at the counter, then at the pan heating on the stove. "Amy," she said softly, "we were actually planning to make something else." I paused mid-roll, the dough flattening under my palms. "Oh," I said quietly. "I didn't know. I can stop." No, Ayan said quickly. "It's fine. Let Amy cook." But Rida placed a hand gently on his arm. A small gesture, but it spoke volumes. "Ayan," she murmured. "Remember the smoke?" I blinked. "Smoke." Rita turned to me. "Amy, you remember last time? The pan got overheated. We had to open all the windows." My hands froze. I remembered that day clearly, because the pan had smoked before I even touched it. She had left it on high heat and walked away. But I had said nothing, not wanting to embarrass her. Yet now, the blame had shifted to me. Ayan looked at me, his expression hesitant. "Amy, maybe just rest today? You don't have to cook." His tone was gentle, but the doubt was unmistakable. I looked down at the dough, then at the stove, then at the two people I loved standing before me. One unsure, the other quietly satisfied. "I understand," I whispered. I washed my hands slowly, drying them on the towel with calm, measured motions. Inside, something felt like it was slowly cracking. Later that day, as I stepped out of the guest room to get my shawl, I heard them talking. Their voices were low, but the hallway carried sound easily. "Ayan," Rita said. "You need to talk to her." "About what?" he asked gently. "About boundaries," she replied. "She is used to doing things her way. But we have our own system." Ayan sighed quietly. "She is only trying to help." "I know," Rita said. "But it confuses Michael. And it disrupts my routine." I held my breath. Then she said the sentence that felt like someone gently pressing a hand against my chest. Not violently, but firmly enough to leave me breathless. "She's making me feel like a guest in my own home." A guest? In her home? I stepped back instinctively, my fingers gripping the doorframe. My heart felt like a soft cloth being wrung slowly, gently, until every drop of warmth seeped out. Ayan replied. "Rita, she doesn't mean harm." "I know that," she said again. "But intention is not enough. I want peace in my home." Those last words echoed inside me long after the conversation ended. Peace in her home. Peace, which apparently my presence disturbed. I walked back into the guest room and closed the door softly. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. They trembled, not with anger, but with quiet grief. When had my love become interference? When had my help become disruption? When had my presence begun to take peace away from someone? That evening, after a long day of silence, I called my neighbor, an elderly woman who lived alone 2 doors down from my house. "Amy," she said gently, "are you doing okay?" I smiled weakly, though she couldn't see it. "Yes, Beta," I whispered. "I am fine." "Your voice doesn't sound fine," she replied. Her words almost undid me. We spoke for a few minutes about her garden, her cats, small details. She didn't ask why I had called. She didn't need to. Sometimes older hearts recognize silent pain. When I hung up, I stared at the wall for a long time. The quiet of the room felt heavy. The next morning, I decided to make tea, not for them, only for myself. I missed the sound of a spoon stirring in a cup, the small comfort of warm chai in the morning. As I poured the water into the kettle, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Rita. She watched me silently for a moment. "Amy," she said softly, "I wish you would ask before using the kettle." "The kettle?" I repeated gently, confused. It's new. And it's part of a set. And I prefer to handle kitchen items myself." I nodded slowly. "I am sorry," I said. "I only wanted tea." "You could have asked me," she said, her tone firm under the softness. I looked at her, really looked. In her eyes I saw not hatred, but insecurity. A deep, persistent insecurity that my presence somehow threatened. And here is what I finally realized in that moment. She didn't want to share the home. Not the kitchen. Not the baby. Not the routines. Not even her husband's time. Everything had to be hers, completely hers, without even a shadow of someone else. I stepped back and said quietly, "Of course. I understand." But inside, something in me began to fade gently, like a candle burning to its last inch. 3 days later, the moment came. The moment everything tipped. It was afternoon. Ayan had gone to the office. Rita was home, feeding Michael. I sat in the living room, folding some small towels. Suddenly, I heard Rita say sharply, "Amy." I turned immediately. "What happened?" She held up the baby's milk bottle. Did you wash this? She asked. Yes, I said softly. I washed it in the morning. Her expression changed, her eyes widening. Why did you wash it with the sponge for the dishes? She said quietly, her voice trembling. I froze. What do you mean? She walked to the kitchen, holding the bottle in one hand and the sponge in the other. This sponge, she said, is for general dishes, not for the baby. I keep a separate sponge for his things. I nodded slowly. I understand. I used the small blue one, I said. The one you kept near the sink. She shook her head firmly. No, that is not the baby's sponge. That is for our cups. I inhaled deeply. But you told me last week. She cut me off. I never said that, she whispered. Her voice was not loud. It was calm, coldly calm. And in that moment, I realized the truth. She was creating a mistake. One that never happened. One that would make me look irresponsible. I stood still. Rita. I would never risk the baby's health, I said softly. But she didn't reply. She only looked at me with a quiet disappointment. Not because she believed I did it, but because she wanted Ayan to believe I did. And he would. I knew it. She knew it. The bottle remained in her hand. Silent evidence of a crime I never committed. That night, when Ayan came home, Rita told him everything. I listened from the hallway, my heart trembling gently in my chest. Ayan, she whispered. I'm worried. She washed the baby's bottle with the wrong sponge. I don't want Michael to get sick. I heard Ayan inhale sharply. Are you sure? He asked. I saw her, she said firmly. Those 4 words, I saw her, became the knife that cut the last thread between my son and me. Ayan stepped into the hallway. Amy, can we talk? I nodded, though my heart knew what was coming. He sat in front of me, his eyes filled with worry. Amy, did you wash Michael's bottle with the wrong sponge? I looked into his eyes, the same eyes I had wiped tears from when he was a child. No, I said softly. I did not. He hesitated. Rita said. I know, I whispered. She wouldn't lie, he said quietly. Those words pierced deeper than anything else. She wouldn't lie. But I, his mother, might? I lowered my gaze. I understand, I said. You must trust your wife. He reached for my hand gently, but even his touch felt different. Amy, maybe you should rest more. Maybe you're tired. Tired. That was the explanation he chose. Not that I was truthful. Not that I was careful. Not that I had spent my whole life protecting him, loving him, raising him. Just tired. I nodded slowly. Yes, Beta. Maybe I am. Inside, my heart quietly folded in on itself. The next morning, as I packed my shawl into my small bag, Rita entered the room. She stood at the door for a long moment, her hands lightly clasped, her expression unreadable. Amy, she said softly. Yes, Beta. She took a breath, calm, steady, sure. I think it's better if you go home today. Just like that. No angif. No scham. Just a decision spoken as easily as mentioning the weather. I swallowed slowly. All right, I whispered. She added gently. It will be better for everyone. Everyone. Everyone except me. I nodded again. Of course. When Ayan came to the door to see me off, he hugged me, gently, distantly. Amy, take care, he said. I smiled. I always do. Then I stepped out. The door closed behind me with a soft, polite click. A sound that ended a chapter of my life. I stood in the quiet of my daughter's house, holding a cup of warm tea between my hands. The steam rose gently, touching my face like a soft reminder that life could still hold warmth, even after everything I had been through. My daughter sat across from me, watching me with worry in her eyes. She had not said much since I arrived. She just let me rest, let me breathe, let me be still. And I needed that stillness more than I ever realized. For years, I had carried a weight inside me. The weight of wanting to be needed. The weight of wanting to be respected. The weight of wanting to be loved by my own child. Sitting at that kitchen table, with the afternoon light falling across the floor, something inside me slowly began to loosen. My daughter finally spoke. Mama, will you tell me everything now? I looked at her. She was no longer the little girl who used to run to me with scraped knees. She was a grown woman now, standing firm in her own life, yet still holding space for me. A space I wasn't pushed out of. A space I didn't have to fight to stay in. And that alone brought tears to my eyes. I took a slow breath and began telling her the whole story. Every detail. Every moment. Every quiet humiliation I had endured. Every time I bit my tongue just to keep peace. Every night I cried alone in my room so my son and daughter-in-law wouldn't hear. I told her about the day my daughter-in-law asked me to leave. How she didn't raise her voice. How she didn't need to. Her words were sharp enough without volume. I told her how my son stood beside her, silent, looking away. How his silence hurt more than any argument could have. When I finished speaking, the house felt still. Even the air seemed to pause. My daughter came to my side and held my hand. "Mama," she whispered gently, "you didn't deserve any of that." And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to truly believe it. Over the next few days I rested. Not just my body, but my heart. My daughter cooked for me. She sat with me in the evenings and we talked about little things. She showed me old pictures. She reminded me of who I used to be before life became heavy. Slowly, I felt pieces of myself settling back into place. One evening, while the sun set behind the window, she asked, "What do you want to do now, Mama? You don't have to decide quickly. Just think. What will make you happy?" It was a simple question, but it felt like someone had opened a window inside me. What do I want? For so long, my life had revolved around other people's needs. My husband, my children, the house, the chores, the expectations. I had forgotten what it felt like to choose something just for myself. I closed my eyes and let the thought settle. Peace. I wanted peace. Not out of fear. Not out of avoidance. But because I deserved a quiet life after giving so much of my own strength to others. I want a small place of my own, I finally said. Something quiet. Something simple. Somewhere I can breathe without feeling in the way. My daughter squeezed my hand. "Mama, you will have that. I promise." The next morning, she helped me look at small apartments in town. Nothing grand. Nothing extravagant. Just a warm, safe place where I could wake up without hearing footsteps outside my bedroom door. Wondering if my presence annoyed someone. We found a small apartment near a park. The living room had a large window where the sunlight flowed in like a gentle invitation. When I stepped inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Home. My own home. A place where no one could tell me I didn't belong. A place where no one would say, "When will she leave?" A place where I would never again feel like an unwanted guest. With my daughter's help, I moved in within a week. I bought a small table for the kitchen. A soft chair for the living room. A bed that felt like a fresh start. The first night I slept there, I cried. But not from sadness. From relief. From freedom. From the quiet joy of knowing I could shape my own days again. Life became peaceful. I began taking slow morning walks in the park. I cooked meals just for myself, simple and warm. I read books. I planted a few flowers in pots by the window. I let the sun fill the rooms. And little by little, I healed. My daughter visited often. She brought groceries or we shared tea. Or sometimes we simply sat together in silence. That silence felt nothing like the silence in my son's house. This silence was comfortable, gentle, safe. I thought I had moved on completely. But life had one more moment waiting for me. One afternoon, as I was watering my plants, my phone rang. When I saw the caller ID, my hand froze. It was my son. I stared at the phone for a long moment, unsure whether to answer. Part of me still hurt. Part of me still wished things had been different. But another part whispered, "You are stronger now. You can face this." So I answered. "Amma," he said softly. His voice trembled. I didn't speak. I waited. "I came home last week," he continued quietly. "And I saw your room. Empty." I swallowed. He took a shaky breath. "She told me what happened. She told me she asked you to leave." Silence fell between us. "I didn't know, Amma," he said. "I didn't know she spoke to you like that. I didn't know she." I stopped him gently. "Son," I said. "It's all right." But he whispered, "No, Amma. It's not." Another pause. Then he asked, in a voice that sounded like the little boy he once was, "Can I come see you?" My heart warmed. Not with expectations. Not with desperation. Just with a quiet readiness. "Yes," I said softly. "You can." When I ended the call, I sat in my small chair by the window and let the late afternoon sun rest on my face. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't waiting for apologies or promises. I had my own home, my own peace, my own strength. If he came, I would welcome him. If he didn't, I would still be all right. Because healing doesn't mean everything becomes perfect again. Sometimes it simply means you learn how to live without breaking. And I had learned that. The next morning, I prepared my small living room without really thinking about it. I straightened the cushions. I wiped the little table near the window. I opened the curtains to let the sunlight in. The room felt bright, warm, and honest, just like the life I was building for myself. Around noon, there was a soft knock at the door. For a moment, I simply stood there, breathing slowly. I reminded myself that I was no longer the frightened woman trying to stay invisible in her own home. I was someone who had survived hurt, found peace, and rebuilt herself from quiet strength. When I opened the door, my son stood there. His eyes looked tired, almost unsure. He held a small bag in his hand, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at me. Really looking, the way he used to when he was younger and needed comfort. "Amma," he whispered. I stepped aside without saying anything, and he entered. He looked around my little home, noticing the soft colors, the gentle light, the peaceful atmosphere. "It's nice here," he said quietly. I smiled a little. "It's simple, but it feels right." He nodded, and for a while neither of us spoke. He sat on the chair near the window, the same place where I often sat to watch the sunset. His eyes moved around the room again, and then down toward his hands. "I'm sorry," he said finally. The words were heavy, as if they had been sitting inside him for a long time, waiting for a safe moment to come out. "I should have protected you," he continued. "I should have listened. I should have seen you." My heart tightened, not with pain, but with a deep, quiet compassion. I walked to him and placed my hand on his shoulder. "Son," I said softly, "life isn't always about blaming. Sometimes it's about understanding." He looked up, his eyes glossy. "I didn't want to hurt you, Amma. I never wanted that." "I know," I said. "And I never wanted to be a burden. We both made mistakes. But we can choose something better now." He lowered his head, and for a moment he just breathed. Then he reached into the small bag and pulled out an old framed photo. It was a picture of the two of us, taken many years ago when he was still a child, holding onto my arm, smiling with all his tiny teeth. "I found this," he said. "I thought, maybe you should have it." My fingers trembled as I took it from him. That picture felt like a reminder of a time before life grew complicated, before distance crept in, before decisions and misunderstandings built walls between us. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded. Then he looked at me again, almost like he was afraid of the answer. "Will you forgive me, Amma?" he asked. I reached out and held his hand. "I forgave you long before you asked." Tears rolled down his cheeks. Not loud tears. Not dramatic tears. Just quiet ones, like rain on the window, soft and steady. I sat beside him, and for a long time we said nothing. We didn't need to. Some wounds don't heal with words. They heal with presence, with understanding, with slow, patient love. After a while he took a deep breath. "I want to visit you often," he said. "Not because I feel guilty, but because I miss you." A gentle warmth spread through me. "Then come whenever your heart tells you to." Before he left, he stood at the door for a moment. He hesitated, then leaned forward and hugged me. It was not a long hug, not a desperate one, just a simple, honest embrace between a mother and her child who had both learned something important. When he walked away, I stood by the door for a moment, watching him until he disappeared down the hallway. Then I returned to my chair by the window and held the framed photo in my hands. Outside, the sunlight was soft, falling across the floor like a quiet blessing. I wasn't the same woman who used to silence her own pain. I wasn't the same mother waiting for approval or permission to exist. I had grown. I had healed. I had learned what peace feels like. And I realized something simple yet powerful. Sometimes life takes us through storms not to break us, but to show us who we can be once the clouds finally clear. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it softens its weight. And love, real, patient love, can always find its way back home. I placed the photo on my table and smiled softly. My heart was no longer heavy. I had walked through the pain and come out on the other side with quiet strength. And with that, my story, one of hurt, healing, and hope, found its gentle end.